Half of the building was engulfed in flames, braving the thick smoke. I searched for my husband room by room. But when I turned my head, I caught a glimpse through the window of him rushing into a taxi on the roadside with a woman in his arms. He even lost one of his slippers in the process. He didn't look back at me even once from beginning to end. Behind me was billowing black smoke, and the glow of the fire faintly seeped through the crack of the bedroom door. My eyes gradually blurred. In the last moment before I lost consciousness, I seemed to hear the ringtone of my mobile phone. After that, I knew nothing. When I woke up again, I was in the hospital. My best friend Sunny was holding a phone with red eyes and scolding someone. "Get lost. I don't need your false kindness. Scarlett is already dead. Just live your life with your first love. Is it Blake?" When I spoke, I realized that my throat was extremely hoarse and it hurt a lot. Sunny threw herself on me and cried, "Nuo, you scared me to death. Fortunately, you're okay. Otherwise, I would have gone to kill Blake." I forced a smile, and my face stung with pain. "Sunny, stop crying. It's not worth sacrificing yourself for a scumbag. You still know he's a scumbag? Why did you fall for him so deeply?" I let out a long sigh. The shackles that had bound me all these years seemed to break at that moment. "Sunny, I'm going to divorce Blake. You finally married him. Are you willing to divorce him?" Hearing this, Sunny stopped crying and looked up at me to confirm. My hand under the quilt clenched tightly, and my nails almost dug into the flesh. I pulled the corners of my mouth into a smile. But as I smiled, tears involuntarily slid down to my temples. "He doesn't love me," I heard myself say. "You just realized that?" Yesterday, Luna's house caught fire. And it spread to our house. When I came out of the shower and found the fire, I searched for Blake room by room. But I found that he left with Luna in his arms. I stared at the ceiling, and the scene of him getting into the car with Luna in his arms seemed to reappear in front of my eyes. My heart felt as if it had been squeezed hard, and it hurt terribly. From start to finish. He didn't even call out to me once. My tone was flat, as if the sadness and heartbreak belonged to someone else. But the tear stains on my face had already betrayed me. In a fire, even a stranger should call out, right? What's more, I'm his wife. I had liked him for 7 years. But in the end, my husband didn't even call me when he was running for his life. After hearing what I said, Sunny was even more furious. "They just wanted you to die. If you die, Luna can successfully take your place. These two shameless people. If something really happens to you, I'll die with them. Then, whatever lo sai." When she turned around and saw my face, she was at a loss and wiped my tears for me. "Don't cry. Be careful of the injury on your face. Don't worry. I've made some money from running my studio in the past 2 years. We can get plastic surgery. And I'll definitely make you more beautiful than before." Afraid that she would worry, I forced a smile. "Okay." Sunny wiped away her own tears with her hand and smiled. "Then we'll find someone better and make that scumbag Blake regret it. Blake is my husband. We just got married half a year ago. But before that, I had been chasing after him for a full 7 years. I like Blake. But Blake doesn't like me. This is no secret to those who know us well. I chased after him for 7 years. And he chased after Luna for 7 years. Sunny once angrily scolded me, saying that we were both love-struck fools and a perfect match. At that time, I still smiled and told her that I was better at chasing than Blake. Since Luna didn't like him, as long as he turned around, he could see me. Until 2 years ago, Luna got married in a flash with her blind date. Blake locked himself in the room for a whole week, and I stayed outside the door with him for a week. A week later, the exhausted Blake opened the door and asked me if I wanted to be his girlfriend. At that moment, my mood was like encountering a timely rain after a long drought. I didn't hesitate at all and agreed to him directly. In the 2 years without Luna, he seemed to gradually start accepting me. I also moved in with him a year later and took care of his daily life without complaint. After that, we went to meet our parents as planned, discussed the wedding arrangements, and finally got the marriage certificate half a year ago. I thought that life would go on like this, until 3 months ago, when we moved into our new home. The moment I saw our new neighbor, I knew that I had lost, and I had lost completely. I asked Blake why we lived next door to her. Blake impatiently lit a cigarette and asked me, "Scarlett, are you annoying? The house was bought a long time ago. How would I know she lives next door?" When he said this, his eyes dodged and he didn't dare to look me in the eye. According to psychology, his reaction must mean that he was lying. But I believed him. In front of him, I had no reason at all. The days that followed seemed no different from before. But at the same time, it seemed that everything had changed. He used to go to work at 7:30. But he changed his leaving time to 7 o'clock, saying that it was for competing for the position of department manager. He, who had always picked me up and dropped me off at work regardless of the weather, no longer showed up. He said that for our future, he had to work harder to get promoted and raise his salary. He also asked me if I could manage on my own. Otherwise, he would call a car for me. I smiled and refused. I'm an adult. I can go back by myself. When did I notice something was wrong? It was 2 months ago. That day, I bought a set of tableware for the house. When I went to the courier station to pick up the package, the shop owner's wife greeted me with a smile. "Why didn't you ask your husband to bring it back for you? He just left and helped your neighbor pick up quite a few packages." At that time, I couldn't really tell whether the shop owner's wife said it casually or was giving me a hint out of pity. I carried a large, heavy box of tableware back home, and my husband was sitting on the sofa playing games. His coat was casually hung on the coat hook in the entrance, and a faint smell of freesia wafted into my nostrils. I froze in place, hearing the sound of the door opening. Blake didn't even look up. "Honey, you're back? What are we having for dinner today? I'm a little hungry." My thoughts were pulled back again. I casually put the box on the ground, making a clattering sound, and asked him calmly, "Did you pick up the package for the neighbor today?" I stared at him, not missing any of his reactions. "Are you following me?" He looked up at me, and his expression suddenly became very disappointed. "Honey, how could you become like this?" His reaction was stronger than I had expected. I gritted my teeth, and my temples were throbbing. "Blake." I called him by his full name, and the expression on his face clearly showed a break. I changed my slippers and sat down beside him. As if nothing had happened, I pretended to be relaxed and said, "Why would I follow you? It's just that a neighbor told me that you picked up the package for the neighbor when I came back just now. I happened to go to pick up the package. When I saw there were Luna's packages, I brought them back together." He explained impatiently while playing games. "Ask me next time you pick up the package." It was quite heavy for me to carry this box back. I gave him an excuse. Hearing me say this, Blake didn't feel surprised at all. It had been like this for so many years. No matter what he did, I would endure it. Sunny said that even the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles couldn't endure as much as I could, and she was right. But now, I suddenly felt tired of this kind of life. "Honey, all that meat on you is really for nothing. You can't even carry such a small box. Okay. Send me the big packages next time, and I'll go and get them for you." He was always like this. I used to think that I was fat, my education wasn't high enough, and my body proportions were good enough. Later, I learned a new word only. They said it was called PUA. I'm 1.68 meters tall and weigh only 55 kilograms. I'm really not as fat as he said. I didn't want to pay attention to him and turned to enter the bedroom. Blake outside was still calling me. "Honey, I'm hungry. Hurry up and cook." For the first time, I didn't want to pay attention to him. That faint smell of freesia still seemed to linger at the tip of my nose, and my hand holding the phone gradually tightened. How close did they have to be to get her perfume smell on him? Did they hug? Or something else? I couldn't help but think wildly. And I couldn't hold back my anger. But besides the anger, my heart was also filled with an uncontrollable emptiness. Falling in love with a man who doesn't love you is really quite boring. I opened my phone and placed an order for a pinhole camera. Maybe Blake outside was getting impatient from waiting. He came over and opened the bedroom door. "Honey? What's wrong with you?" I turned around and smiled at him. "Honey, I'm a little tired today. Let's order takeout." Okay? Blake frowned and stared at me for a long time. Finally, he agreed. All right, but we can't eat too much takeout. Look. You've got a little belly recently. I raised my hand and touched my belly. Suddenly, I thought of something. Maybe I'm pregnant? That's impossible. Blake blurted out almost immediately. I stared at him steadily and retorted. Why is it impossible? He didn't say anything. He grabbed his hair irritably and turned around to leave. The pinhole camera arrived the next day. I installed it outside the door and adjusted the angle repeatedly until it was facing the open space between my house and the neighbors. After doing all this, the ringtone of my mobile phone rang at the right time. It was Blake calling. Honey. I have to work overtime today and will be back later. Weren't we supposed to go to our parents' house for dinner today? I asked him. Something came up suddenly. You go back by yourself today. After hanging up the phone. For some reason, that faint smell of freesia seemed to linger at the tip of my nose again. I frowned and found Blake's colleague honest in the address book. Honest, are you working overtime today? No. Now the Labor Bureau is strictly investigating the 996 work system. And the leaders are all scared. The corners of my raised mouth dropped. Yes, cuddling fulfilled my obsession. The leaders are all scared, but our Blake isn't. Even as slow-witted as Honest noticed something was wrong at this time. Sister-in-law. You too. I laughed twice. It's okay. Thank you for your trouble. Honest. After hanging up the phone, my thoughts seemed to empty all of a sudden. And a thought of getting a divorce suddenly emerged in my mind. When the words divorce appeared in my mind, I was also taken aback. Since I was 16 years old, marrying Blake had been my dream. But now, I actually wanted to leave him. I opened the bank app. I had been paying off his credit card bills. But he suddenly didn't let me manage it 3 months ago. Maybe I could find out where he was now through the purchase records. The content of the bill surprised me greatly. From as small as concert tickets to as large as bags and jewelry. The consumption amount in just 3 months reached as high as 200,000 yuan. It was equivalent to more than half a year's salary of Blake. However, not a single one of these things was for me. My income has been supporting the family expenses for the past 6 months. And what about him? He used all the money to play the fool. It turned out that we were both qualified licking dogs people who sacrifice a lot for someone they like but are not reciprocated. The most recent expense on the bill was 10 minutes ago, and the recipient was a well-known jewelry store. Even a single ring there would cost at least 2 months' salary of Blake. This transaction cost 64,388 yuan. Thinking that our wedding rings were a pair of plain bands, which only cost less than 3,000 yuan in total, I suddenly felt an indescribable feeling in my heart. Sunny, can you help me contact a lawyer? Sunny runs a small studio and often has some business disputes. So she has a lawyer she has been working with. She sent me a contact information and then asked, "What's wrong? Who's causing you trouble?" No. I just want to consult about the issue of marital property. You're already married. What's there to consult about? I told you to sign a pre-emerita agreement back then. But you didn't listen to me. Sunny on the other end of the phone had just started chattering for a couple of sentences when someone came to talk to her about work. And she hung up in a hurry. I added the lawyer and told the other party that I wanted a divorce. The lawyer asked me about my demands. After thinking for a while, I typed a line, "Can I get back the part of the money that my husband used to buy gifts for other women? I admit the money spent on Blake. It's my own doing and the price I paid for being a licking dog. Since he wants to curry favor with other women, of course, he should also pay the due price." I didn't go to Blake's parents' house for dinner. His parents already didn't like me. When they heard that Blake had to work overtime, they directly told us to come another day. I went alone to the largest Sky restaurant in Zhongcheng, planning to have a good meal. I've also come to my senses now. Anyway, hunting fulfilled my obsession. What I'm using now is all community property after marriage. The money I saved by living frugally to buy a new car has all become jewelry on others. Why bother? I pointed at the 5 most expensive items on the menu and said to the waiter grandly, "Just these." The portion of Western food is not very large. But these 5 dishes alone cost me 3,000 yuan. While feeling sorry for the money, I buried my head in eating. When I looked up, I saw a familiar figure walking towards a table not far away with a bouquet of flowers in hand. I watched as he handed the bouquet of flowers to Luna and then took out a bracelet and put it on her wrist with his own hands. I tried my best to open my eyes wide, wanting to see clearly what this bracelet that cost 64,388 yuan looked like. But I couldn't see clearly at all. My eyes had already been blurred by tears. Fortunately, the green plants beside the table blocked my embarrassed appearance, allowing me to maintain the last bit of dignity. The waiter beside me was startled when he saw me suddenly burst into tears and quickly asked, "Madam, did you hurt your tooth?" I shook my head. These dishes are just too delicious. Yes. They were too delicious. This was the first time in my life that I had eaten such expensive dishes. I randomly stuffed the last piece of foie gras into my mouth, wrapped my old coat that I bought the year before last tightly around me, and left the restaurant. The man behind me was singing the happy birthday song to Luna, and the pianist in the restaurant was very cooperative and accompanied him. The waiter saw me out and said politely, "Welcome to come again." I nodded slightly as a response. But only I knew that I wouldn't come again. Never again. A place that doesn't suit me. Even if I force myself to fit in, I will still feel out of place. It's the same with people. The people who don't suit me will eventually not be able to stay with me. After I got back, I submitted an application for an overseas assignment. The company happened to be short of staff for a business in Bicheng, so they sent me there. Blake came back very late that night. I closed my eyes and pretended to be asleep on the bed. I was surprised that he came back. It seemed that even with a surprise and a gift, he still couldn't win the favor of that person. Early the next morning, before Blake woke up, I picked up my suitcase and left. The overseas assignment was only for a month, but I felt as if I had been reborn. It was the first time I knew that the world would be so wonderful without Blake. I can eat and wear whatever I like, without having to consider Blake's preferences at all. I bought my favorite camisalo, got a spiral perm, and grew wildly on my own in a strange city. A month passed in the blink of an eye. I was sitting on the high-speed train back, bored by looking at the surveillance records at my doorstep. During the month I was away, they went home together 30 times. From keeping a distance at the beginning, to hugging naturally later, and finally to kissing as if no one else was around. I thought I would feel heartache, but there was no more of that dull pain in my heart. I even wanted to send Blake a congratulatory text message. After being a licking dog for so many years, he could be considered to have finally seen the light at the end of the tunnel. I stroked my chin and pondered. I guess that Blake should be going to divorce me when I get back this time. Right? I sent Blake a message out of mischief. Husband, I'm coming back today. Blake, what a lo-fi, who was in high spirits and holding a beautiful woman in his arms, didn't have the time to pay attention to the notification on his phone at all. When I got home, Blake was sitting in the living room playing games. He was on the microphone and said to the other side, "Luna, hold my hand. Be careful of the jungle are on the opposite side." His tone was so gentle that I had never heard it before. I raised my eyes and looked at him. Our eyes met. He seemed a bit surprised by my new look, but he didn't say anything. I put my luggage at the door and said directly, "I'm going to take a shower." The water wet my hair. I washed away all my tiredness and was still thinking about when to have it out with Blake. The divorce was inevitable, but I couldn't let him be the one to bring it up. I had also exported the surveillance video I just watched and sent it to the lawyer. I believed that the lawyer should have almost finished collecting evidence during this month. I walked out of the bathroom while drying my hair. The person who was originally playing games in the living room was also gone. Suddenly, a burning smell came. There seemed to be smoke coming in from the tightly closed door. I was shocked. I called 119 immediately and then used a bath towel to soak up water and block the gap under the door. "Blake, there's a fire." There was complete silence in the room, and no one responded at all. I frowned and opened the bedroom. Study. Guest bedroom. He was nowhere to be found. I took out my phone and called him. The phone rang over and over again, but no one answered. When I looked up, I happened to see Blake's figure outside the window. The person in his arms was wearing that bracelet that cost 64 pounds and 388 yuan on her wrist. He ran so fast that he even lost one of his slippers. But he didn't look back and hailed a taxi and left. I stood there frozen. I knew he didn't love me. In his heart, I was not even as good as a single hair of Luna's, but I had never thought that in the face of life and death, he would actually leave me, who had accompanied him for 7 years. Without hesitation, the thick smoke filled my nose. And I suddenly woke up. There was a fire. And I had to find a way to save myself. Otherwise I would really die. I had to stay alive and make them pay the due price. I tried all the methods I could think of. I even opened Baidu on my phone and followed the self-rescue methods on it. But I still couldn't stop the fire from spreading. I regretted it deeply. I should have installed a smoke alarm earlier. However, there are not so many should-have-knowns in this world. I curled up in a corner of the room, covering my mouth and nose with a wet towel. But I still started to feel drowsy. At the moment I lost consciousness. I seemed to hear the ringtone of my phone and the sound of a police siren. It was the firefighters who saved me. But because the alarm was given too late, when they arrived, the fire was already very big. I lived on the 13th floor. And the rescue was very difficult. Although I had burns covering 20% of my body, lost my newly done hairstyle, and my face was disfigured, I was very grateful that I was still alive. Sunny said she would take me for plastic surgery. But I said, "You can take me, but I won't let you pay for it." Sunny's face immediately darkened. She stabbed the fruit knife in her hand into the apple fiercely, held it up with one hand and walked up to me. And asked me fiercely, "Scarlett, what do you mean? Do you have to draw a clear line with me too?" I grinned and smiled, with a bone-chilling coldness in my eyes. "They made me like this. They have to pay for it. Right?" Sunny was also taken aback. She sat on the stool in silence and continued to peel the apple. After a while, she said mournfully, "I know you've been bullied badly by them. I used to be angry that you couldn't be helped, but now seeing you like this, I feel even more uncomfortable." She sighed again. "But it's also good this way. Be stronger and protect yourself. There's still a long way to go in the future." I gnawed on the apple that she stuffed into my hand and was full of holes. I felt even worse and called her, "Sunny." Sunny raised her hand to interrupt me. "Stop it. Don't say those touching words. Tell me what to do. I'll help you." I told her about my plan to get a divorce and to file a lawsuit against Blake to divide the property. "We also have to make that bitch pay for the compensation, including your injuries, the loss of work income, the real estate, and the property, and so on." Sunny stood beside my bed with her arms crossed, calmly analyzing for me. "Don't worry. None of them will be left out. This time, it wasn't just our family that was unlucky. The 2 families upstairs were also affected. I guess Luna won't be able to pay off the debt in her whole life. I wonder if my dear husband will help her bear the debt." Just as we were talking, the ringtone of my phone rang again. I looked at the caller ID, picked up the phone, and asked him in a deep voice, calling it this time, "Do you want to see if I'm dead or not?" Blake's slightly tired voice came from the other end of the phone. "Scarlett, can you stop making a fuss? I'm already very tired." The anger that I had suppressed for a long time was ignited by him at that moment. "Are you tired because I'm not dead? Since you're tired, why are you calling? You carried Luna and ran down 13 floors in one breath. Why didn't I hear you say you were tired? Are you done? Luna sprained her ankle, and I took her to the hospital. What's wrong with that? When did you become so petty?" Blake's voice also sounded very irritated. My heart was filled with sadness. Yes, heading fulfilled Blaibsai. I almost lost my life. While she just sprained her ankle. I'm being unreasonable. Blake didn't want to talk to me more and directly interrupted me. "Sign the letter of understanding. And this matter will be over. Where are you now?" "Letter of understanding? Whom should I understand?" I asked. "It's Luna. She didn't do it on purpose. It was because her phone charger suddenly caught fire that this happened." I listened to Blake anxiously explaining for Luna and hung up the phone expressionlessly. understanding? He actually had the nerve to say that. I smoothly blocked Blake's phone number and deleted him as a friend on all kinds of social media platforms. Seeing me sitting there in a daze with my lips pursed, Sunny asked me, "What did that scumbag Blake say again?" I didn't hide it from her. As soon as Sunny heard it, she picked up her bag and rushed out of the ward in a hurry. "That bastard. Watch me teach him a lesson. A letter of understanding. Even if he goes straight to the 18th level of hell right now, I still won't forgive those two shameless people." I quickly stopped her. "Sunny. Don't be impulsive." Sunny stopped in her tracks and turned around to look at me in disbelief. "What? Scarlett. Don't tell me that even at this point, you're still protecting him?" "Protecting him?" I gave her a blank look. "I'm just afraid that he'll hurt you again. We have to think this through carefully." After hearing what I said, Sunny indeed stopped. "So what do we do? Tell me about it." "First, get a divorce. The lawyer has almost finished collecting evidence." Having said this, I looked up at Sunny and asked her with great interest, "Do you think Luna's husband is on the same side as us now?" "Of course. His head is almost as green as a prairie now. And he still owes a huge amount of compensation. Even Dewey wasn't as wronged as him." I thought for a while and said, "What do you think would happen if I sent him a copy of the video?" Sunny couldn't help laughing. "That's a good idea." 10 before this. Even though I knew that Luna had always been in Blake's heart, I never blamed her. Being liked by others was just because she was excellent. It was not until I saw the video of the two of them hugging and kissing. Since she didn't think highly of Blake, she should never look back. Why did she still want to go back to him? During this fire, she was carried downstairs by Blake without a second thought, and she didn't take any remedial measures. She didn't even call the neighbors to evacuate together. Fortunately, the neighbors upstairs and downstairs weren't at home that day. Otherwise, who knew how big a disaster it would have caused? Poor her husband. Not only was he cuckolded, but the fire burned 4 houses in a row, and he had to pay for the damages. I asked the lawyer to make an appointment for me to meet Luna's husband. I had met him a few times before. This man wasn't as good-looking as Blake, but he was about 5 centimeters taller than him. Judging from his clothes and demeanor, his family background should be quite good. Otherwise, Luna wouldn't have gotten married in a flash after the blind date. It was just that he seemed to be on business trips frequently, which gave Blake the opportunity to curry favor with her. "Scarlett?" He looked at me with the bandage on half of my body, and was a bit surprised. I hummed in response. And then I heard him say, "I really didn't expect you to be so badly injured." I sighed. "Thanks to your wife." He didn't say anything. I opened the tablet and handed it to him. "Take a look at this first, and then we can talk." The video was edited and speeded up by me. In just 5 minutes, it vividly showed their lingering relationship for a month. I originally thought that Forrest would be furious when he saw this, but he was much calmer than I expected. This surprised me a bit. "Forrest. Aren't you angry?" Forrest raised his eyes and looked at me. "Compared to you, I don't seem to be that miserable." I was silent for a while, thinking of the huge sum of money he had to pay in compensation. I didn't feel as angry anymore. I didn't tell him that I was going to sue Luna. But he wasn't stupid. Just by looking at how badly I was injured, he knew that I wouldn't let it go easily. He handed the tablet back to me and said, "If you want to sue your husband for adultery, this evidence isn't enough." I looked at him in surprise. "Even like this, you can still accept it?" Forrest stood up. "Scarlett. Whether I can accept it or not doesn't matter. What matters is that the judge won't determine adultery just based on this. However, thank you for telling me so much. I have something else to do, so I'll be leaving now." I knew he was right. Just a kiss wasn't enough. But in this month, they really didn't enter each other's houses except for the time when the fire broke out. My lawyer told me that the other evidence he collected was enough for me to successfully get a divorce. And he told me not to worry. I knew that if I wanted to get my money back completely, I had to prove the fact that he had committed adultery. 11 at this time. I was like a Sherlock Holmes, carefully checking all kinds of social media accounts of Blake and Luna, and I didn't even let go of their mutual friends. Finally, heading to Psi. A month ago, when I was dispatched to Bi Chang, I saw a group photo posted by one of their mutual classmates. It's been 3 years since we last met. Today, it feels like we've gone back to the old days. In the attached photo, everyone was holding a wine glass. Blake and Luna were standing very close to each other, and Blake's gaze was fixed on Luna. My gaze was fixed on the posting date, July 2, 2022. Somehow, I opened my surveillance records. Sure enough, the surveillance didn't capture the whereabouts of either of them on that day. I also logged into his credit card center. Fortunately, he didn't seem to have thought of changing the password yet. But unfortunately, there didn't seem to be anything unusual about his expenses on that day. Did I really wrong him? Or did Blake actually pay for it that day? I furrowed my brows and stared at my phone, lost in thought. Suddenly, I thought of one of Blake's habits. He was used to paying for hotels and plane tickets with Alipay. Now that we've completely fallen out, it's impossible for me to secretly look at his phone and check his records. What should I do? I looked at the homepage of Alipay, and my mind was racing, until my gaze fell on the pattern of a tree. Green energy? Holding a glimmer of hope, I found his green energy interface and opened his dynamics. He usually didn't care about this at all, and he hardly had any green energy to collect. However, when I scrolled back a month to July 3, I found that more than 100 grams of his green energy had been stolen by others. According to the proportion, it meant that his green energy on the previous day was at least over 200 grams. And the green energy given for staying in a hotel was exactly 219 grams. Taking the restaurant where they had dinner as the origin and the longest distance between their two companies as the radius, I selected the best hotel. There was a high chance that they stayed here. Blake, who always tries to act tough when he's not, would definitely not let his goddess stay in an express hotel with him. Speculation can't convict someone. If I want to get conclusive evidence, I have to get the surveillance from the hotel. Of course, the hotel won't disclose customer privacy casually. I can only entrust the lawyer to handle this matter. On this day, I officially filed a divorce lawsuit with the court, and the lawyer applied for an investigation order on my behalf. Of course, this wasn't the end. To homeless people who have been hit both emotionally and financially, do you think they'll snuggle up to each other for warmth now? I asked Sonny. Most likely. I asked his colleague and found out where he lives there. The address was given to me by his colleague Honest. Since we were husband and wife, he thought we had a quarrel because of the overtime or class time. When he sent me the address, he also told me that husband and wife should make up after a quarrel, and there's no problem that can't be solved. How could he know that his good colleague didn't have a quarrel with me, that instead had an affair with someone else? Leave professional matters to professional people. I've already entrusted a private detective to investigate. Once the evidence is successfully obtained, he'll be charged with bigamy. Sonny looked at me with shining eyes and flicked my forehead. I winced in pain and covered my forehead with my hand. Then I heard her say with a smile, "You're quite smart when you're not being love-struck." I shrugged. Well, reality has taught me a lesson. Sonny hugged me affectionately. Relax. Leave the rest to them. You have to get ready for the second repair surgery. I shook my head. I have to call my parents first. I know Blake too well. If he can't get through to me, he'll definitely go to my parents. Rather than letting my parents listen to his nonsense, it's better to tell them the truth early and let them prepare in advance. Of course, I won't tell them about my injury for now. 2 months after my second repair surgery, the private detective sorted out all the details of their relationship over the past 2 months and gave them to me, and I then handed them over to the lawyer. One day, I was doing rehabilitation exercises when Sonny rushed in excitedly and gossiped with me. "Nuo, Luna has divorced her husband." I wasn't surprised at all. His head is almost as green as mine. It's normal for them to get a divorce. Sonny winked at me. I heard that they're fighting over the custody of their child. They should be in a real mess right now. I laughed. Then let's add fuel to the fire. Since we've already decided, why not do it today? Let's sue Luna together. I spent so much on the surgery. and someone has to pay for it. The lawyer I entrusted filed a lawsuit with the court on the charges of arson and bigamy. And it was quickly accepted. At this time, I also received a court notice for the divorce case with Blake. At this time, the scars on my body hadn't completely healed yet. I thought they were ugly. So half of my body was still wrapped in bandages. But even so, I still chose to appear in court. In the court, I finally saw Blake, whom I hadn't seen for a long time. His gaze swept over me and landed on the door. And there was a hint of anxiety between his brows. I knew that he didn't recognize me. It wasn't until I was pushed by Sonny to sit in the plaintiff's seat that his pupils dilated and his face turned pale instantly. I never thought that one day I would be in court with Blake, but at this moment, I felt much more relaxed than I had expected. The divorce and property division were much easier than I had expected. The evidence in my hand was very conclusive. The surveillance at the door of my house and the photos and videos sent by the private detective clearly recorded all the intimate moments between the two of them. The judge granted our divorce. The common property was divided 60-40. And the money he spent on buying jewelry for Luna either had to be retrieved or deducted from his share. At the same time, because I was seriously injured and temporarily unable to take care of myself, he had to pay me $3,000 a month for recuperation expenses. At this time, Blake seemed to have some guilt in his heart, and he accepted all the court's judgments. After coming out of the court, Blake stopped me. "No. I raised my hand to interrupt him, looked into his eyes, and emphasized word by word. "Blake. Please call me Scarlett." Blake frowned. "I'm just worried about you. How are you?" I had been in the hospital for almost 5 months. My heart had long been as hard as a rock. And even after hearing his words of showing weakness, I remained unmoved. "As you can see, I'm fine. I didn't sprain my ankle. What's the big deal?" Hearing my sarcastic words, Blake was a bit annoyed. "Why have you become like this now? Wasn't it you who chased after me in the beginning?" I twitched the corners of my mouth. "Yes. When I first chased you, you liked Luna. But you knew to keep a distance from me. I thought you were a decent man." Speaking of this, I laughed again, raised my eyes, and looked at him. "Later, when Luna got married, you proposed to me. I thought you had completely let go of her. But I didn't expect that you were also a double-standard person. You can keep a distance from everyone except Luna. But not with her." Blake, do you know what your behavior is called?" Looking at his stunned appearance, I continued. "This is called extreme egoism. Do you really like her?" "I don't think so. If you really liked her, you would not care about what others thought and still get involved with her after she got married. You only love yourself. Being nice to her is just because what you can't get always makes you restless." I withdrew my gaze and said to Sonny, who was pushing my wheelchair beside me, "Sonny, let's go." When Blake saw that we were about to leave and tried to catch up, he was stopped by Sonny. "Blake, Nuo has liked you for so many years. She bought you meals and ran errands for you when you were at school. The company where you did your internship in your senior year originally selected her. But she voluntarily stepped back and gave the opportunity to you. Later, when you got married, she also contributed money to buy a house together. All these things, even if they caused you some trouble, you didn't get no benefits from them. Right? She has been tortured by you to this state now. Can't you just leave her alone?" This time, Blake didn't chase after us. And Sonny and I were silent all the way. 14 later, Blake called me with a new number and said that he regretted it. I just thought it was funny. I regret it too. Blake on the other end of the phone seemed a bit happy. "You regret it too? Let's make up. I rented an apartment not far from your company." I interrupted him. Blake, you might be mistaken. I just regret following you for so many years. Wasting 7 years of my youth and ruining the rest of my life. No, I've really let go of Luna. I won't have any contact with her in the future. Can I take care of you from now on?" He asked me cautiously. It was a tone I had never heard in my life. But I no longer cared. "Take care of me? No need. I don't want to die yet. Nuo, please give me a chance to atone for my sins. Okay? I really know I was wrong." he pleaded on the other end of the phone. I was silent for a moment and then said, Blake, you Masoni, do you know what it feels like to have burns covering 20% of your body? Even if you soak your whole arm in a pot of boiling water now, you still can't feel it. I'm tired. Don't call me again in the future. After hanging up the phone, I blocked his number with a flick of my hand. I knew that he might not have the chance to call me again in the future, because the lawyer told me that the case accusing Blake and Luna of bigamy was going to be in court today. Today was the day of my third repair surgery. And I didn't attend the court session. When they sent me into the operating room, Sonny pinched my face and said, Go ahead. When you come out this time, there should be good news. I thought so too. As expected, for the crime of bigamy, the sentence is fixed term imprisonment of not more than 2 years. Blake was sentenced to 1 year. For the crime of causing a fire, if the circumstances are serious, the sentence is fixed term imprisonment of not less than 3 years but not more than 7 years. Luna was sentenced to 3 years. The property loss and medical expenses, etc., added up to a total compensation of 3,720,000 yuan to me. Upon learning of this result, I also felt quite emotional. If Luna hadn't run away directly after the fire, she might not have ended up in this situation. What goes around comes around. No one can be a princess of the whole world. There won't be anyone in the world who will keep flattering her like Blake did. Because of the crime, the child was reasonably awarded to Forrest. For this reason, Forrest even specially sent me a fruit basket. He said that women can be really scary when they're ruthless. I remained unmoved. Who would want to scheme and fight if they could be an innocent girl? 15 When I had my 6th scar repair surgery, the scars on my face had become very faint. At this time, Blake was also released from prison. Because of serving a 1-year prison sentence, he was fired by the company. I heard that he went back to his hometown and found a job as a real estate salesperson. And I didn't ask any further. Until one day my mother called me. Nguyen Yuo, where are you now? Blake came to our house looking for you. Fortunately, having fulfilledly, I had already told my mother everything that happened between me and Blake in detail before. My family was very cautious when mentioning Blake in front of me. Mom, I've been sent on an assignment by the company. Blake won't be able to find me. Don't worry. By the way, didn't he cause trouble at our house? I asked. My mother sighed. Your father beat him out. His parents also came twice and were driven away. Then how about we sell our house and buy a new one? I suggested. But my mother didn't want to. There are all familiar people in the staff quarters. I don't want to move to other places. I had no way to persuade my mother. Then my mother smiled and said to me, Your younger brother beat Blake up yesterday when he was drunk. Your father and I watched by the side and pulled them apart when it was almost enough. Their family definitely won't dare to come again next time. I relaxed a bit and said, Mom, thank KZHE for me. Tell him not to fight next time. In case they try to blackmail him. AZHE is still young. My own life was in a mess. And I didn't want my family to be dragged down by me anymore. Nguyen Yuo. There's something I don't know if it's true. I heard from Aunt Jane that Blake issued a letter of understanding for Luna. And he doesn't need to pay back his share of the debt. When I heard this, I didn't feel much at first. But what my mother said next made my back shiver. He's penniless now and has no income. His family heard that you got the major part of the property after divorcing Blake. And Luna also paid you a large sum of money. So they told him to get you back no matter what. So that's what their family was thinking? Fortunately, hadn't fulfilledly. I was firm in my decision. After the fire, I hadn't contacted anyone except my family and Sonny. Mom, once is enough to jump into the fire pit. How dare I do it a second time? I'm not staying in Zhongcheng anymore. He won't be able to find me. That's good. You're a single girl. When you're out, be careful. If you can meet someone suitable again, don't reject it. It took me a full 2 years to repair my face. And I finally looked like a normal person again. The skin on my body hadn't been fully repaired yet, so I couldn't wear the little camisoles and shorts that I liked. I found long dresses and short sleeves to cover the scars on my body and got my hair permed again. In order to cover the marks on my face, I started wearing heavy makeup. Because of the scar repair, my chin was a bit shorter than before, and my nose bridge became much straighter. I became much more delicate as a whole, which could be considered a blessing in disguise. Sunny laughed and teased me. You really have the qualifications to find a young and handsome guy now. You're both a rich woman and a beauty. TSK TSK. I laughed. I don't have enough money to be called a rich woman. I still need to find a new job. Of course. Before that, I went back to visit my family. It was only after seeing me that they knew how badly I had been injured before. My younger brother was so angry that his teeth were itching. I should have hit him harder back then. I hugged him. Don't be angry. It has nothing to do with us anymore. Things will get better and better in the future. On the way to the station, I met Blake again. I passed by him calmly. Just like any random stranger on the road. He didn't recognize me either. I watched him bargain with the vendor for 2 peaches. And then I calmly carried my bag and walked into the station. In the days that followed, some people said they wanted to introduce a new boyfriend to me. I refused all of them. There's more to life than just love. I need to pick up the work and social life that I had neglected because of love. Maybe one day, I'll be confident and independent and live with ease in this world. At that time, I might meet someone I want to spend my life with. Let's talk about it when that day comes. The end.